What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Weighing In Podcast. We've got a big weekend this weekend for fights. You got the PFL this Friday night. You got Johnny Eblen versus Brian Battle. That's going to be a battle, I should say. Obviously, a lot of pun intended. It's going to be a fantastic fight between those two. You got Dalton Rosta on the co-main event. I can't remember off the top of my head who he's fighting, but he's a stud as well. Trains out of American Top Team. Looks like Hercules.
Are you talking about UFC?
No, PFL is on Friday night.
Oh, PFL.
And then you've got, that's on Friday night. I was getting there. See, you got to listen to the intro, buddy.
Yeah,
but
sorry.
The Saturday night fight or Saturday show on March 28th is the UFC Fight Night 271. You got Israel Adesanya versus Joe Pyfer. That's going to be a great, actually, to be honest, this is probably name value wise, probably the best card they put together this year. It's a stacked card. I like what they're doing. You got Alexa Grasso versus Macy Barber. Now I know you're going to get fans going, hey, man, it's a female fight. It's a co-main event. This is a great fight. It's a really good fight. Macy Barber, I think, is one fight away. If she beats Alexa Grasso, she's pretty much next in line for a title shot. She deserves it. I'm all for it. But, I like this, man. I like this card. Michael Chiesa, it sounds like this will be his retirement fight, and he's got Nico Price. They threw this fight on there. You got Julian Rosta. I mean, you got some good fights, especially on this man. You got Terrence McKinney. This is the one that kind of threw me off a little bit. Now, maybe this is not the real bout order, but you've got Ricky Simón versus Adrian Yanez all the way down on the second fight on the card. On the prelims. Not on the main card, on the prelims. So very, very strange to me. Very strange to me. But there's a couple other good fights on this card. I know I skipped all the way down there, but that fight really threw me off to see Ricky Simón all the way down there, the second fight on the prelim card against Adrian Yanez. I hope that's not the case. That to me is going to be a pretty good fight. And I also like the Marcin Tybura fight versus Tyrell Fortune. Tyrell Fortune, a really good wrestler, but decides to not wrestle, so he tends to stand, which falls right into Tybura's trap. And I think it'll end up being a good fight, man. And last but not least, or there are actually two more. You got Bahamondes versus Tofik Mosayev. Mosayev, a very good striker, phenomenal fighter on the feet. Bahamondes obviously is a stud as well. And I think you got Chase Hooper and Lance Gibson Jr. Lance Gibson Jr. and his dad and I were around that same era of 2001, 2002, 2003, 2004 of the UFC. And yeah, man. So the fact that his son is fighting in Bellator, is fighting in the UFC, good for him, man. I covered a lot of his fights when he was with Bellator, did case-side commentary on it, did desk segments on him, and really good person, too. Really good, down-to-earth guy. Chase Hooper, obviously, most of you guys know him. Look, I'll break down some of these fights as we get going, and obviously the PFL main event as well. But I know we have the thumbnail has talked about, I saw some comments from some media and some press, and then Ariel Helwani being one of them. And I want to get into a little bit of this conversation about and I've talked to a couple managers today. I've talked to a couple other fighters today. I've talked to two promoters in the last couple days about what's wrong, like what's going on with the sport. And I don't want to put it all onto the UFC. I feel like everyone seems to be just shitting on the UFC right now. And there's just so many ways that we can go about this to talk about. Let's talk about the positives. Let's talk about the negatives. Let's talk about what the UFC can do to grow this sport, to get it back on track. And what I mean by that is like nothing's wrong with it right now. What it is we're in a little bit of a lull between stars. And throwing money at the problem is not going to fix the problem. And no one was like, oh, well, we should have got John Jones. We should have got Conor McGregor. We should have had those fights at the White House. We haven't seen this announced yet. But throwing money at that is not going to fix what's going on right now. I'm going to have Dave pull up. Hey, what's up, podcast? Dave, welcome to the show, my man. Welcome to the show. Can I get a little less space above the head? I'm glad you closed your closet behind you earlier. It was a total disaster earlier behind in that closet. I mean, the blow up doll came rolling out, it was very strange, very strange. So,
oh Lord,
show me. Okay. So I was flipping through some of the social media stuff. I saw some content that Ariel did, and it just kind of got to me a little bit. I was like, hey, let's go ahead and role play. Let's go ahead and play it, and we'll go from there.
Okay. Let's bring us up real quick. Here, ready?
Yeah, can you zoom in a little bit so we can get a little bit more of that facial reaction? There we go.
I continue to say the master of good timing, the master of good timing, the beneficiary of the best timing in the history of the sport is Conor McGregor, because he is sitting there. He is sitting there as everything is kind of, I'm being dramatic here, kind of burning down. That meme of the dog and this is fine. He's kind of sitting there being like, all right, yep, I'm sitting pretty right now. Of course you want me back. And I'm telling you, we told you about the meeting 2 weeks ago. I told you it went well. PT told you it went well. At this point, I think it would be safe to say that it would be a disastrous situation. Something disastrous would have had to have happened if he's not fighting on July 11th. They need this now more than ever. They need Conor McGregor to be on this card. They need Conor to come back. They need the return of the Mac. They need the promo. They need the poster. They need the post. They need the social. They need all of that. They need people talking. They need people getting excited. They need this guy now more than ever. And they have to do everything in their power to make this happen. And I saw a clip. Let's play this clip of Max Holloway, because Max.
Go ahead and pause.
Max is very calculated.
This is real. This was kind of like, I understand where he's going with this. It would be nice to have Conor McGregor back. It would be nice to have John Jones fight at the White House. It'd be nice to see John Jones fight again for the UFC title. And don't get me wrong, if they were to sign them and get them back and pay them what they are willing to get paid, I would love to see them, and I would tune in to watch just so I could cover it obviously on this channel. But the simple fact of the matter is that we don't need Conor McGregor. We don't need John Jones. What they need to do is spend more time investing into their younger fighters. Now, I also believe, and I've said this for years now, I believe that you can build young fighters under a big name like a Conor McGregor. Absolutely. But what I gathered from his comments is that we need him like he's the savior. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Dave, did you get that from that?
Which part?
Like we need Conor McGregor, the man that comes in and just they need him more than ever. We need him on the poster. We need him to get talk going on.
Did I get that?
I don't think so. Is that what you got from that conversation or from his statements?
I mean, that's what he said. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, but I didn't. For me, we don't need him. We don't need Conor McGregor. We don't need John Jones. We at this stage, and this is. And I was in this position as well, not in their position, not in John Jones' position or in Conor's situation of making that amount of money to come back and to be the head, to be the main event on a show. Was not in that situation. I'm not trying to relate me to them in that situation. What I'm saying though is at 38 years old, whether they're Conor McGregor or whether you're John Jones, you're seeing that they have no interest in paying the GOAT $15 million. They have no interest in that. Now, they may pay him for another show where they can sell tickets and make the revenue back. They may do that.
July 11th is International Fight Week.
What's that?
July 11th is International Fight Week.
Yes.
He's not talking about White House.
No, I understand that. But what I'm saying is that we don't need him International Fight Week either. Okay? If you have Ilia's fighting, obviously, a month or two before that. But there's other fighters that you can build up onto that platform. You have Ilia Topuria is obviously fighting at the White House. You've got him. Okay. You've got Islam. You've got other fighters. You got Alex Pereira. You have fighters that can go ahead and carry the weight. And you can build your younger fighters under them. You have to eventually cut bait and move on. The UFC needs to find another avenue to build up stars. I can't explain it anymore. There is nothing that we can, you're not going to get any more. I think you'll get some viewership. You're going to gain some viewership. I shouldn't say that. Conor McGregor is not going to bring any more viewership. I can't say that. Is that what we're getting at this thing where Conor is not, we're not going to get much more out of him. And so in not getting much more out of him, I don't think we need to push a 38-year-old or however old, 39 years old or whatever, to say that we need him to keep the sport going. We don't need that. Having him is definitely a luxury. I definitely enjoy watching him fight. Dave, you would tune in to watch him fight, correct?
Yeah. Okay. I think their argument is that they just need a a big like injection, like a big dose right now, something like a big dose of energy just to kind of get this Paramount wagon moving. I mean, you remember the first card of the year fell off on Paramount, fell apart, and then I think did the second one not have an issue or something, or had one fight fall off?
Yeah, the first one, Kayla got hurt, so you lost that.
Right.
Yeah, you lost,
and that was really your fight. Like if that fight had happened, I feel like you at that point, like if Kayla and Amanda had happened, you'd have been kind of smooth sailing right now. But I think Ariel's point is that, you know, since Paramount, there's really not been anything that's like kind of like screamed in your face. Even the White House card, you know, because I think because of the build towards the White House card, the kind of argument is that it's not screaming your face. Yeah, it's a solid card, but it's not screaming your face. And so you need this scream in your face and dose of like injection of like just life into the UFC brand specifically right now, especially when you have that competition. I mean, you have that Rousey card, which is just, I mean, imagine if the UFC had that on the White House. I mean, that is the card. Anyway, I think like that's kind of like the point that is being made.
Let's take a look though at the people that let's take a look at the people that are refusing to go away. Like Dustin Poirier left, he left on his own. He's like, look, I'm going to wrap it up, call it a career, 37 years old. Okay, but arguably he's one of the biggest draws in the promotion. Justin Gaethje, one of the biggest draws in the promotion, now fighting for fought for the interim title and now defending it against Ilia Topuria for the undisputed title. Ilia Topuria is a star. Alex Pereira is a star. Islam is a star. You know, you go through Volkanovski, to me, is a star. I know that he lost a little bit of his luster after he lost to Islam, and he lost the way he lost to Ilia. He's still a star. Chimaev is a star. Absolutely, he's a star. Tom Aspinall is going through a rough patch right now. But what I'm saying though is that you take a look. Tom Aspinall is not a young guy.
Let me pose a question to you though. If Conor is your A star, are those guys also A stars or are they B stars?
A minus.
Okay.
Yeah, A minus.
Okay.
I take a look at Islam, and he does. I think he does good numbers in terms of viewership. Obviously, he hits a certain part of the world, no different than Ilia hits a certain part of the world. Alex Pereira hits a certain part of the world. They each do. What we are lacking is American stars.
So I'll just say that, like, to Ariel's thing, to maybe this will kind of help you frame something, but like, I think Ariel's argument is for like MMA purists, like the handful of us, the handful of you that are left, like MMA purists, right? Like Ariel's like an OG MMA purist guy, Luke Thomas, you know, a lot of these other podcast guys, but for everyday people that they want tuning into the sport and getting into the sport, maybe this deal on Paramount where there's no additional cost involved with viewing the best fights that the UFC can or was willing to put on, maybe like it is the time to just roll with, like you were saying earlier, the new talents, and not rely on those big dose of like life to catapult anything or to boost anything. Like maybe you can just coast comfortably with good fights and decent stars that don't have to be Connors and John Jones and Rondas or whatever.
You're going to need to eventually have those, otherwise your product starts to fade away, especially in the entertainment business. The WWE is a
right, but
classic
like
example of that.
But like Pereira, right? Alex Pereira, he is an example of like a star in the sport right now that brings eyeballs, is entertaining. A lot of his social media stuff performs, right? And he wins fights and he's at the top of the heap. You know, unlike guys that are also entertaining but are not, but like, you know, win some, lose some. So I think that I don't think I'm saying it's nothing, it's all or nothing. I think like you have the stars, you just don't have them at the Conor caliber or the John Jones caliber, Ronda caliber. And
there may never be that ever again, only based on the fact that like that came at a time when the companies had merged. WC moved into the UFC, Strikeforce moved into the UFC. You had basically almost all of the best fighters in one organization. That's why they were able to capitalize during that time. I call that the golden era. That's when everyone went to the UFC. And you got to kind of see the fights that you really were hoping to see. That was the hope anyways when we went there. Where the UFC, I feel like, has fallen short is The Apex was huge during COVID. The fact that they have not got away from the Apex is really killing their brand. And what I mean by that is that when they don't go, all the shows that they do at the Apex, those are the small shows that they used to do in all the small towns across the world. And that's how they were able to gain new fans that had watched it on TV. But those fans became diehard fans. They're the fans that were like, man, went and saw someone in person. The fighter that I kind of wasn't sure if I liked, I saw him in the hotel lobby because UFC fighters and fighters in general are just approachable. Like, hey, can I get a picture? Hey, what's up? They're accessible. And that moment is gone now. So those 30, think about this. How many Apex fights are a year? Say 25, 30 of them? Somewhere around there.
Yeah.
It's got to be somewhere around 20 to 25, somewhere around there. That's 25 fights in other little towns across the world. Then now you're not gaining new fans. And I don't have anything against the Apex. It was there for us.
I don't think it's that many, by the way.
Okay, well,
the last couple of years. So I'm looking at UFC Vegas 100 was November 9th, 2024, and they're currently on UFC Vegas 115.
So last year, that can't be right. It's got to be more than 15 shows. 15 shows a year.
Last year was, I mean, prior to last year, right? Every year it's gotten less and less because they've been back on the road. But I think last year was 15 is probably realistic.
Okay, so 15 shows worldwide that we are not getting an opportunity to build new fans, whether it's in Canada, whether it's in the US, whether it's in Australia, whatever. It can be anywhere in the UK in a town that they wouldn't normally go to. You're not giving your fans an opportunity to see their favorite fighter or to meet new fighters, and all of a sudden becoming more fans and developing more fans. That to me is where they're really struggling. Second is, the UFC. I think everyone wants to blame the UFC for the growth. I'm not blaming them for the growth at all. They're doing the best they can right now, and I'm going to go ahead and give them a pass for this first 6 months. I would even say probably pushing into the November month. So I'll give him a pass on this, getting this deal done. You remember they started kind of behind the 8 ball because they didn't want to do any real promoting of them leaving ESPN to go to Paramount until after the deal was done after the last fight. And I feel like they actually waited to the end of the year until January. So then that meant that first fight was didn't get a lot of press. I mean, it did a little bit because a lot of us were talking about how excited it was going to be because it was a free numbered event. And then when Kayla fell off, it was like, oh, it's the UFC. They're not backing it up with something else. They expected a bigger fight in that situation. They're doing the best they can. I don't want to keep taking jabs. I don't want to put all the blame on the UFC. The UFC could of course, make some changes. Absolutely. I think you're going to see this is, I think, a card that, with Izzy and Joe Pyfer, I think this is a card. And then moving forward, I think UFC, the numbered event is like 327 or something like that. That ends up being a pretty damn good card. A 320, something like that. There's some good fights coming up. Some good fights coming up. Ramadan is done now. So you've got guys like Chimaev and Islam that'll be available to fight, plus some of the other fighters that are also Muslim that, don't like to fight or train, or they do train during, but not to the expectation of being able to fight. I know Evloev just fought, and, I can't say that he looked fantastic. I thought he looked good. I thought he won the fight, or actually I thought it was more of a draw, but I understand when he did win the fight. But there's a lot of negativity, not just from fans, but it's the dig, I think, from the media as well, that they need to do something. They have to do this. They have to do that. They don't have to do anything. If they're going to do anything, they should spend more money and more time investing into their younger generation. You have, I don't know how old he is. I believe he's 24 years old, maybe 25 years old. Joshua Van is the 125-pound champ. Very fun fighter to watch. Okay. Very enjoyable. Young champ.
24.
Yeah. You got Umar is still young, 29 years old. You've got, Sean O'Malley. Still young. I think he's 30. Might be 31. Still young. You've got some young fighters that are still available, ready to go and perform. Diego Lopez is a fantastic fighter. You've got some young talent that's still available there to go ahead and build on. Do you build them on? Would it be better off to build them underneath the Conor McGregor and Alex Pereira and a John Jones fight? Absolutely, it would. But this notion that we need 38-year-old stars that are definitely not in their prime anymore, it's not true. We don't need them to save the sport. It's never been that way. We've never needed a 38-year-old to save the sport. The expectation that he's going to come in and like it's going to be great. It's sure we're all going to tune in. People are going to watch. But he's not the guy that he was, and pretending otherwise is ridiculous. And to think that he's going to come in and save the sport is also ridiculous. John Jones has never been a huge draw. Don't get me wrong, he's obviously a star. Dana calls him the GOAT. I'm not taking anything away from him, but he's never been the one that does the biggest numbers. So to think that he's going to come in and save the sport, that's not the truth either. He's also 40 years old or 39 years old, somewhere around there. Alex Pereira is 38 or 39. I mean, for a lot of the people that are making fun of the UFC, of the MVP card and older fighters, the reality is that a lot of the UFC's best stars or biggest stars are all towards the end of their fighting career. At 38, 39, 40, pushing it. Don't get me wrong, you got Ilia, still young. Islam is 33, I think, 34 maybe. I don't think he's going to fight much longer. I would not be surprised if he has 2 more fights and he calls it a career. Would not be surprised.
34.
Yeah. I don't think he's going to fight until the wheels fall off. I think he's going to kind of take the Habib approach, try to finish on top. And I don't have any inside source, even though we're friends, even though I've had him on the pod, and even though we've done interviews. No, I don't have any inside source on when he plans on retiring. I don't think he knows yet. But but to think that we need older stars to go ahead and save the sport is ridiculous. And this is not a dig at Ariel. I don't think we need a Conor McGregor to come in and do this. I think it's just going to take some time to really build up this new generation. Where I'm going with this is that, or what I mean by this is, guys like Dustin Poirier, guys like Justin Gaethje, they're not going quietly into the night. They're making it extremely difficult for the younger generation to come up and earn their spot. Paddy Pimblett is a perfect example. I mean, I walked away from the Paddy Pimblett and Justin Gaethje fight becoming more of a fan of Paddy Pimblett. I loved what I saw. Sure, he didn't get the win. I get it. Justin's a stud, man. I mean, he's been delivering some of the best fights in the organization for a decade. He's a phenomenal fighter. Dogging him. Paddy Pimblett just came up against a guy that just had that little bit more than him that night. But I actually walked away from that fight going, damn, when is Paddy going to fight again? It's funny because it was asked the other night to Dana, like, when's Paddy going to fight? Paddy was there. When do you plan on fighting? He's like, probably International Fight Week. He's like, there you have it. International Fight Week. I enjoy watching Paddy Pimblett fight. There's fighters that I want to see fight. Joshua Van. Anytime he fights, I want to see the younger guys coming up. There needs to be more of an emphasis on putting these guys on cards that they can be built up on. Give them a platform, and they need to rise to the occasion. They need to deliver. It sucks that Joshua Van won the title that way because people were like, you didn't earn it the right way. Bullshit. He still won. But I think that we've gotten so much into this negative talk about the UFC. I'm going to give the UFC a little bit of a pass on this based on that. There's just not as many people out there willing to be fighters for this pay. It doesn't spark their interest anymore. Back when Rory McDonald was coming up and I saw him fight his first fight against Carlos Condit in the UFC, fought a great fight, was winning. I think he won the first 2 rounds. I ended up getting tired and exhausted. Carlos was able to put him away, I think, in the last 30 seconds of the 3rd round and win the fight. But in, I believe, the interview or the lead up to it, they were talking about Rory McDonald and how Roy basically came up in MMA. Had a kickboxing style background and this and that. But man, he's like, he was one of those kids that like came up training jiu-jitsu, training some judo, like, you know, and a little bit of wrestling and mainly striking, but he came up doing MMA. That has gone away now. And I think a lot of the reason why that's gone away is because we're getting kids, not getting kids, but we're losing kids an opportunity to have kids come in, you know, and we're losing them in the NIL money. So the wrestlers are places that we would steal them from. Those wrestlers now are making us, say you're a D1 wrestler, you're basically in the top lineup. You're making a couple $100,000 a year to wrestle at a D1 school. That is more than, I'd say, 50% of the UFC fighters. And they're not getting punched in the face. That's a big deal. Now, maybe this Paramount deal will change all that. Maybe they'll start making 25 and 25, you know, as an entry-level fighter. Who knows? Maybe they'll cut back on the amount of fights they have, you know, between, say, 13 and 15 fights. I don't think we need that many fights. If you're going to use the Dana White Contender Series fight as like basically it's just a feeder league. 100% it's a feeder league. It's no different than like the LFA or the RFA and whatever other small organizations that are out there. It's no different than them. It's just a Dana White Contender Series. It's separate from the UFC. Even though Dana, it's got his name on it, it's a feeder league. If that's all you're going to do, then you can just have them continue to fight in that organization every Tuesday night or every other Tuesday night or whatever it is. And just call it what it is. We don't need to have the dumbed down version of MMA fights. I think that's where we're losing some of the fans. The fans have stalled out because first you're in the apex multiple times a year. You said 12, 15 times a year. Okay, we're in the apex. Well, you're losing fans because you're not actually out there socializing with them, bringing their favorite sport to their town. So you're losing fans that don't get an opportunity, a chance to actually ever meet the fighters. That was one of the benefits of being an MMA fighter, was that to the fans, is that we were very accessible. So there's a lot, man. There's a lot of ways the UFC could improve it. And sure, money-wise, absolutely they can improve the money. Because I've talked to a lot of college wrestlers that are D1 wrestlers. Some are All-Americans, a couple are national champs now after last week. They have no desire to fight anymore, knowing that they're walking away with $400,000, $500,000 a year that they've made. They're getting a head start on the expectation. They can jump into any job or career they want and not have to worry about, how am I going to buy a house? How am I going to take care of my family? They could jump right into it. They don't need to go through the hard work of getting punched in the face. That's going to kill our market. The wrestling market is a market that they understand the grind. They get it. They don't mind putting in the miles. They don't mind getting after it against the wall. They don't mind slugging it out on the feet. You're losing those fighters. You're losing those prospects because of the NIL money. The other portion that I think the UFC doesn't have control over, and I've said this about the media, and I said this a while back about the media. And I know it came out wrong because I said promote when I should have said cover. And I go, look, the biggest issue is when I was working for Bellator, everyone called me a shill, Big John and I both. You guys are shills. You guys are talking about, all you guys talk about is the Bellator fighters, and you guys, you always get too much. And then fans have decided to shit on John and I, and shit on me because I'm talking about Bellator fighters. But the simple fact of the matter is, as soon as Bellator went away, there was no more competition that was remotely close. The PFL was never competition. Bellator was the bottom of the bottom of being close to some sort of competition to UFC. But it's gone. And somebody sent me a fight card. Let me pull it up real quick. I'm going to take a look at it. But somebody sent me a fight card. And it's just funny because I'm looking at that fight card and I'm thinking to myself, man, and this was actually a tweet, to be honest, from Andy Hickey MMA is who put it up. Bellator did cards of this quality and better for better than over a decade, and no one tuned in and no one cared. Let me give you the names. So yeah, sorry, they didn't put the card up, but he was just saying like, then he put up the MVP card, and he's like, there was fights that were better. They put up cards just like this, if not better, with bigger names, and no one tuned in and no one cared. People are gonna watch this on Netflix. Netflix has got something. MVP has got something. Obviously, times have changed. Bellator was towards the end flopping around from Spike TV, CBS Sports, Paramount to finally ended up on Showtime. And they did a couple shows on CBS as well. They killed their own brand at the very end. They were looking for ways out. But Bellator put on some really good fight cards from AJ McKee, Patricio, Eblen. You had Fedor. You had some good, Brian Bader. You had some good fights. Gegard Mousasi. Like, you've had good fighters. Corey Anderson. You had a lot of talented fighters on those cards. They put together great fight cards. No one tuned in. No one cared. So what you have is fan base that is biased towards the UFC, which is cool. They have the right to like whatever they want. But where I get, and this is what I said, hey, if the media did their job and promoted, I said promoted when I should have said covered, each promotion, somewhat equally, I think that Bellator would still be around. That's a strong statement. Maybe I'm wrong. Because Paramount had a lot of underlying issues, leading up to this. Obviously, they were struggling. That's why they just, they've kind of fallen apart, been bought up. And so all of that being said, like there was so many other underlying issues with it all, but that I think having media coverage that was equal, that would cover the fighters and the fights, to help push them, I think would have done the sport of MMA a justice. Because I remember when John and we started the show, we talked about, we're going to talk about every fight promotion that there is, sometimes some boxing, but mainly just, whatever MMA fight promotions we can. And Podcast Dave would get on us about like, hey, every time you talk about Bellator, the numbers are not there. But that was like, we don't care. We wanted to talk about the sport of MMA. And now the people that are whining and crying and bitching, the media a lot, about how the UFC is doing this wrong, the UFC they have no competition. And I know that the media has said, well, you're media now because I do a podcast. Fine, call me media. But I've done the best job I can, and I did it with Big John for years, to cover all of the MMA that we possibly could. One was very hard to cover because of the time change, and we struggled to somewhat find when it was on. But we covered almost every PFL event. Even if we didn't like it, we were like, man, this card's not a good card. Even if we didn't like it, we still covered it. Even when we knew there was going to be clicks, we still covered it. I talked to 2 managers today, and they're like, man, this was one of those, like, had the media spent the time pushing the fighters and fights that Bellator was doing, they may still be around. And I had to somewhat agree with them. Maybe they wouldn't be around because Paramount was going through its own issues, but maybe they would have been sold to someone else if they would have shown a lot more work, or like if they would have shown better results. Who knows? Maybe they would have been sold off versus just given away to the PFL. I'm not trying to sit here and blame the media for the failure of Bellator. I'm not doing that either. But the same media that is complaining right now about how things are being handled by the UFC are the same ones that they refuse to go in depth about the fighters and the fights and the level of those fights on a regular or consistent basis to keep other promotions around, to give direct competition to the UFC. And had they done that, I think you would have ended up with a little bit more. I think you would have ended up with a little bit more competition for the UFC, which would have led to either fighter pay going up or a battle between free agency. You could have had more fighters going like, I can jump ship over here and make a little bit more money, get some wins, and potentially come back. Masters of the Universe. Let me pull this up because I actually kind of let me read this out to you. I think it's timing, Josh. If Bellator was doing the quality they did back then today, it might get more eyeballs because the sport is bigger now, if that makes sense. This was literally 2 years ago. What do you mean bigger? It was 2 years ago. And I saw Jonathan Martin on Ariel's show. I watched the clip of it, basically talking about how the PFL is possibly going to rebrand. They've been talking about this for about a year behind closed doors. And it does not surprise me that they would rebrand, given that if you take a look at this last week's main event and co-main event, it was all Bellator fighters. So why would you want to continue to call it PFL when no PFL fighters are actually at the top of their organization that they call PFL now? It needs a rebrand. It does. Unfortunately, it's very costly to do a rebrand. And next week's main event and co-main event are Bellator fighters. The biggest stars outside of the UFC were built up in Bellator. And you know how they were built up? They were built up underneath big names like Fedor, big names like Chael, big names like Ryan Bader, Gegard Mousasi. They were built up under them and then eventually fought them and then eventually beat them. Nemkov, you know, like you have guys out there, Corey Anderson, like you have guys out there that they made their way up, beating the old dogs. So when Ariel says, hey, we need Conor to be there, it'd be nice to have Conor be it's almost like the older guys have this obligation to handing over the reins to the younger generation, when in reality they don't have that. You should never go out there and take an ass whooping to hand it over to the next guy down. I've never felt that way. But to think that we need Conor McGregor and John Jones at 38 and 39 years old to come in and save the sport I don't agree with that at all. I don't agree with it at all. The UFC can make some changes. Minimize how much time. Start going to smaller towns instead of doing Apex shows. And I know it's crazy because they put so much money into the Apex to go ahead and have more shows. But my conversation, or not my conversation, but my tweet a couple years back, and I got all the flack over it, was because I said promote when I should have said cover. In the media, we should. Like, I had Brett Okamoto on, and he talked about it in that interview. If you guys haven't checked out that interview, check it out. I believe it dropped this morning at 10 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a great interview. Had him on for about an hour. Brett is someone who's a no bullshit guy. He's not gonna pussyfoot around the conversation. He's gonna tell you what he thinks. I love his work. Everything about him, he's straightforward, direct. And I asked him a question about how do you feel like that media has become more about the business? The MMA media has become more about the business of MMA instead of the fights and the fighters. He gave me a rebuttal on it. You guys should tune in and watch and see what he had to say. But I feel like that's another reason why we're losing fans, or maybe not even losing fans, just there's not as much interest. People are not tuning into every event. Not as if the cards have been stacked. They have not been stacked starting the new Paramount deal. But I think fans are just losing interest because there's too many fights on a card now. 13 to 15 fights is a lot, man. And I'm happy for those fighters that are on the roster. But it has a tendency sometimes to it ends up being a long night every single time. So by the time you watch the main event, you have no recollection of who fought the first 1 through 5 fights. Unless you end up with a Mason Jones Sola fight on that. Then you're like, oh man, I remember that fight. Like, if I was to talk to you about last Saturday's fights, with all those fights on that card, the biggest fight that stood out on the whole card was the Mason Jones solo fight. I just brought it up. The reason being is because that's the first fight that came to my mind that whole night. Then obviously the main event. And the reason why the main event sticks out in my mind is because of me texting managers and me texting other promoters and them saying like, is this a matchmaking problem? And I strongly agreed that it was a matchmaking problem. I felt like they didn't really like either fighter. So they were like, let's match them up against each other. Whoever loses, we put aside, and whoever wins fights for the title. And I think what they did was they got enough of a sample size out of Evloff to be like, you know what? We saw enough about how he fights a stand-up guy, how he wasn't able to really control Lerone Murphy on the ground enough. We think that Volk could beat him now. And so that Volkanovski's going to go out there, and they think that Volk can beat him. They saw a big enough sample size in a 5-round fight that they think that Volk can beat him. We're not seeing the best guys fight the best guys anymore. I don't know what that's all about. Let's give you an example. And you got Brendan Allen, who just beat RDR. And RDR was, fought and was supposed to be fighting for the title had he beat Brendan Allen. He probably would have leapfrogged Strickland had he beat Brendan Allen. He didn't beat Brendan Allen. But now Brendan Allen is not even fighting. I don't think he's fighting a ranked guy. He's fighting Shabazian. Is Shabazian even ranked? No, he's not. So Brendan Allen is ranked number 6. Shabazian's not ranked. So that's I think where we're running into some problems. Is how do you go from beating RDR, who I think was ranked number 5 or 6 at the time, and now you're ranked 6, and now you're fighting a guy who's not ranked at all. And you could say arguably that Brendan Allen did them a favor by stepping in because he was a replacement.
Isn't that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's pretty much what I'm saying. Like they did him a favor. But why would you put Brendan Allen against Edmund Shabazian and he's not ranked after he just beat RDR, who was supposed to fight next for the title? I think this is where you're losing. This is where the UFC is losing some fans. Like, hey man, why are we not getting the best fighters fight the best?
But there could be a million reasons, right? Like, are you just like taking like an example that maybe like you don't know all the details behind?
Yeah, we don't know if like everyone in that weight class is injured. We don't know that. It could be everyone in that top 15 weight class could possibly be hurt.
Maybe he just said he wants a fight before he wants a tune-up fight or something before he goes in for like the next. I don't know.
He's a pretty active fighter. Like he tries to fight. I mean, he took that fight, I think, on like 3 weeks or 4 weeks notice or something, I believe, against RDR. Anyways, I think ultimately it comes down to if you want to see this, if you want to see the UFC be pushed, we need to start as fans. And I'm a fan. I'm not just the guy that stepped in the cage and fought. I'm not that guy. Like, I'm not just a guy doing a podcast. I'm a true fan of the sport. Truly am. But if we want to see the sport grow, we want to see the fighters get paid more, we need to support the sport of MMA and not just support the UFC. Because all the people that always gave John and I a hard time about covering Bellator, covering PFL, covering other organizations, I'm like, just let me know when you guys talk about the UFC fights. Well, that directly affects competition. If there's not another promotion for them to go do, to have some sort of competition between promotions, for them to even leverage to have like, hey, can I get this fighter for a little bit more money because I want him? That's not available right now. The PFL does not have the money to compete. So if you're a fighter, why would you go there? They have the money for the Paul Hugheses and the AJ McKees and the Nemkovs and those guys, the Johnny Eblens, the guys that are at the top that they've built over time and that they've pushed, and then they've developed names and they've developed personalities and they've got a following. They've done a great job of that. I mean, they're gonna have to redevelop who they are as an organization. The PFL is, which they've talked about. If the rebranding happens, my thought is they go back to being Bellator. I would not be surprised if they go back to being Bellator.
You mean, oh. Do you want to play that clip right now?
Yeah, do you have it?
Yeah, I got it right here.
Okay. This is on the Ariel Helwani show. Can you zoom in?
It's like a split screen
Okay.
thing. It's like a
Got it.
box.
Consider a rebrand, fresh start.
Yeah, we're still maybe considering it.
Okay, it's still on the table. When will you make that decision?
Soon.
Is it in the works?
Yeah,
Okay. Now, when you say rebrand, like name change, logo change?
possibly.
Okay, wow. Within 2026?
Maybe.
Wow, okay. There's a lot happening
There
here.
is a lot happening. I think we want to signal that this really is
A new
a
era.
new era.
Okay. So a total change.
Mhm.
Wow, okay. That's very interesting. Did you get
That's a big change. That's huge. My thought is that they go back to being Bellator. You have all, because you pretty much you have all the footage, and you can use all the footage for those fighters. If you try to rebrand it, and I mean, like, you can still use all the old footage. You own the PFL and the Bellator stuff. But I'm saying, like, it just, you have the footage of them wearing the Bellator belts. You reach out to networks. Networks have probably heard of Bellator more so than they've heard of the PFL. Scott Coker had a really good relationship with a lot of networks. So if you go back to them, if you go to them for the first time as Jonathan Martin, who obviously has a ton of relationships in the TV industry, I think that he has a great chance of doing something. I would imagine he probably has gotten feedback going, hey, we're willing to go ahead and give you guys some TV rights. This is probably what we'll do, but you're going to have to change the name. The PFL name is just not working. And I would see that they would probably go back to the Bellator. They have the artwork. They've got everything they need. I don't know how in depth they want to go to rebranding, but I think it's smart. I think it's a really solid move for them to move on. The organization, the PFL, I like what Jonathan Martin is doing. As soon as he stepped in, they got rid of the tournament series stuff. It was trash. They stopped calling the cage the smart cage. That was another just total gimmick trash. They stopped all the hoopla and they started putting on the best fights. we got Brian Battle versus Johnny Eblen this Friday. Stoked for that fight. Dalton Rosta is the co-main event on that card. I'm excited for this Friday night's card. Last weekend was Costello Vancinas versus Fabian Edwards. I loved Costello Vancinas' fight coming up. Fabian Edwards, great guy. Leon's brother, just a good fighter. There is fighters that were built and developed inside the Bellator cage. And I like it, man. I like the idea of switching it over. That show, this weekend's fights, March 28th. It's in Pittsburgh, right outside of Pittsburgh, but it's in Pittsburgh. Yeah, Impa Kasanganay. So you got Impa Kasanganay versus Dalton Rosta. Impa Kasanganay used to be the PFL 205-pound champ. He fought Johnny Eblen in the Battle of the Champs in Riyadh the beginning of last year, and I worked that show. Great fight. Tested Johnny Eblen to the very end. Impa obviously is on the receiving end of the Joaquin Buckley spinning back heel kick, but he's a dangerous fighter. He's got good cardio, heavy-handed, kind of comes forward, can take shots. Dalton Rosta, explosive, big guy. Sumiko Naba, heavy hands, good boxing from Hawaii versus Lipsky da Silva. Obviously, you guys know her. She's from the UFC. You've got other fighters on here that are really talented fighters. I'm not saying dig deep into the card, but there's fighters on here. I think that we need to do a better job as fans of becoming fans of the sport. And I said this years ago. Big John and I said this for years. Because if you want to keep the UFC honest, if you want to keep them to building the sport and trying to make it better, you need to have competition. Right now, they have no competition. They haven't had competitions for years. And like I said earlier, Bellator was the minimal of competition because they had a little bit of money. They go ahead and take the fighters that they really wanted to sign. The Gegard Mousasi, when he left, he was ranked number 4 or 5 when he left. Corey Anderson was ranked number 3 when he left. Brian Bader was up there also. Phil Davis was up there also when they left. They came over. I was still ranked in the top 15 when I came over. Look, I'm not I'm not here to like beg you guys to start watching other MMA promotions, but I'm simply saying, like, if you want to see a better UFC product, start watching other MMA events. Start supporting other MMA events and media. Start doing a better job of giving these fights and fighters more exposure. That's it. Give them, it doesn't have to be equal, because I know it's never going to be equal. It's never going to be equal where you give them the same amount of time, those fights and those fighters, the same amount of time as you give the UFC fights and fighters, because it doesn't click. You don't get clicks from it. At the end of the day, it's the entertainment business and it's the influencer business where everyone's doing it for clicks. And if you're not getting clicks, then, you know, you stop talking about them. But Bryan Battle, when he left the UFC, was the talk of the town. Didn't make the weight, you know, and this and that, all these things. But I think he's only got one loss in the UFC. Renat Fakhretdinov. He lost to him. That was his one loss in the UFC. Urbina, he's beat. Gore, he beat. Sato, he beat. Lost to Fakhretdinov. Beat Gabriel Green. AJ Fletcher. Beat no contest with Lusa. Kevin Jusset and Randy Brown beat both of them. One loss and then walked away, or was released because he didn't make the weight. But man, people like to talk about, the media covered him pretty well leading up to those fights. Media, and maybe for all the wrong reasons. But I think that he is, that he's somebody like we should all be excited that he's making his debut in PFL. He signed a good contract with them, and he's fighting the former PFL champion in Johnny Eblen, who's a dog. Good wrestling, good striking, and Bryan Battle's a guy that just walks forward and delivers shots. How does Johnny Eblen handle that? We've talked about multiple times Johnny Eblen being one of the best middleweights in the world. Well, we're going to find out. Bryan Battle's a dog. So all of these things. Let's see. It says, let me pull up this. Robert Valley or Vele or whatever it is, however you say your name. I watch all MMA shows. I used to flip through channels watching amateur shows, local pro shows, and that's what's great, being able to say, hey, I saw that guy fight before they were in the big stage. I agree. I absolutely agree. Ryzen right now has got an organization that I think that could do something. Sadly, they are mainly just like the smaller weight classes up to like 155, maybe even 145. They've got a lot of talented fighters, you know? And this is another thing. Gegard Mousasi should have had the title shot. He was the best middleweight in the world. I thought he was the best middleweight in the world when he left the UFC right at that moment. The Uriah Hall fight set him back. And I understood that, but he was one of the best fighters in the world, if not the best fighter in the world at the time. And ONE FC does not have money to break into the States. And they choose not to because their money comes from, I believe, Asia. So they don't have a desire. They want to keep it over there. And in doing that, it crushes their brand. You can do huge numbers over there, but it also doesn't tally up to making money here in the States, or to making money, period. I think as an MMA community, me being one of them, we need to do a better job of being positive about how we can build the brand. And lately it's been a lot of negativity. The UFC White House card is trash. It's a good card. You have to look at it from a promoter's point of view is, why would I use Conor McGregor there when I can't sell tickets? I can't get my money's worth out of putting him on that fight card. John Jones, they didn't want to pay him more than $15 million. Does he deserve more? Absolutely, he does. But why put them on a fight card that you can't sell tickets? $20, $30 million, $22, $23 million is what they make at the gates. That covers John Jones's fight purse and then some if they have a John Jones fight on the card. So I understand why they didn't have the White House card as stacked as everyone wanted it to be. Ilia Topuria wanted too much money. His own manager called him out. So that's why they went with the Justin Gaethje fight. They were trying to put the Islam and Topuria fight together. So I don't know. Look, if you guys have some questions, you guys have some comments on here, go ahead and snap them up or go ahead and put them up there. I want to thank you guys so much. Also, too, if you guys haven't tried this new hydration drink, it's called LMNT. It's awesome. They just came out with their skinny cans. I love it. As you guys can see, I'm wearing the hat. But look, man, they've got a new pineapple salt. Absolutely amazing, as well as their lemonade salt. I like it. My kids like it. If you guys want to give it a try, there's a link down below in the descriptions. Check it out, man. Like it's a great product. I like the skinny cans because they're a lot easier to carry on the go. Plus the bigger cans, like I would drink probably about 3/4 of it and I couldn't finish the end. These are the perfect size. I like this is the new flavor though, by the way. The pineapple salt is very good. That and the lemonade salt are my two favorites. I like grapefruit as well. Big John was a big fan of the grapefruit one. So you guys check that out. Use the link down below in the descriptions. They'll send you over a free package with every purchase, man. It's a great product. So no sugar in it. It's got a ton of magnesium, got a ton of potassium. Helps me sleep a lot. And as you guys know, if you guys watched the show before I went to go do my CPI stem cells, I've always had a hard time sleeping. So I use this product called LifeVantage, and I also use this product here called LMNT. And between the potassium and magnesium, I'm being crushed in sleep. Really vivid dreams. Wild, man. So I've always had a hard time sleeping since I was in high school, even before that. But especially when I was in my fight career. So if you guys have had a hard time sleeping, man, check it out. Use the link down below in the descriptions. Appreciate you guys. Also, go to wewantpicks.com/offer. Use the promo code ANDSTILL. Check out Angelo and Jacob's. It's mainly Angelo's, but like Jacob does a great job on that platform as well. But check out their AI platform for their betting. It's awesome, dude. So it gives you all the analytics you would need to put together your own bets. Check that out. It's $10 a month. And with the 10% discount, it's like $90. It's like $9. Then if you want to pay for the year, it's $100, $99. It ends up being like $89. So check it out. If you guys don't like it, cancel anytime. It's $10. You guys spend more than that at Starbucks. So calm down. Okay. So $10, you can check it out, get in there, see what it offers. Also, there's other people that put their bets in and tell you why they place those bets. So check that out. Dave, what else you got for us, man? Let's talk about some other thing. I feel like I ranted on about that, and I didn't want it to be negative. I feel like the UFC's got some work to do. Media's got some work to do. And as fans, we all have some work to do. But I don't want to put it strictly into being negative about the UFC because the UFC is still doing pretty good numbers. 5 million. I know it's not the numbers that people were expecting, but 5 million views it's a little bit of growth, and that's way more than any pay-per-view has ever done. So just remember the Khabib and Conor did 2.4, 2.5 million. That's the most viewed UFC fight ever. So think about that. These guys now are doing 4 and 5, 3 and 5 million views, huge numbers. So give it some time. I think these fight cards from what UFC is it 327? I think is next.
Yeah.
Or not, the next numbered event is 327.
Yep.
That fight card and on, I look for the numbers to kind of hit that 6 to 8 million view. I think they'll get numbers between that 6 and 8 million views. Those are good numbers. I don't want to dig into them too much because like I go back to the old days of Showtime. I go back to the old days of CBS when they did the UFC, when they did Strike Force on those cards. Like, Fedor fight and Brett Rogers, I think did like 6.9 million, but different times. So way different times. So my man, I appreciate you so much. Thanks for the super chat. Says some dude in the chat. Thanks for all you do, Josh. Hey, man, I appreciate you, man. Thanks for the $10 super chat. You've been amazing. I know I went on a little bit of a rant. Keep it positive. Let's keep it growing. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the PFL real quick. I'm going to talk the main event, co-main event, and then we'll go on and we'll talk about the UFC. What do you got there, Dave? You have something else you want to say?
No, I mean, I was deciding where we were going to go next. But
okay, what did you have up?
No, it's fine. I had the George Masvidal thing. I figured that played into all of this.
Oh,
but
let's
it's okay.
go. Let's go. Play that.
Okay.
Pull that up, and we'll talk about that as well.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good. I like where I also saw that as well. Let's hear it.
Wait, can you see it?
No.
Which one is it? This one.
The fight on this card. I had a very good, nice offer from Netflix, but UFC had other plans for me. They said, no, we're gonna use you, and we're gonna break the news here first on this podcast. Who they want me to fight, and when they want me to fight, and where they want me to fight. And I was talking to Nikisa. I get along very well with Nikisa, and beloved friend for even thinking of me and calling me up and stuff. But it just it didn't work out. So I had the first offer before they gave it to Nate. It was me, and I desperately wanted to take the fight. But UFC has a good plan for me. They told me the plan. I like it, and we're gonna see it through now.
So you're coming back.
Coming back now,
Let's go.
Yeah.
I'll show you guys the message from Hunter where it says "Welcome back home." Blah blah blah. And then
That's
they show
sick.
some of that up on the thing. So I had a good
That's
long
good.
talk with Hunter.
Yeah, look, there was a lot of talk about guys coming over. And like I said, I was mentioned to be in that kind of fight conversation as well for the Nate Diaz fight. I was actually just hit up again recently for another match that they were trying to put on that card just this morning. And so, yeah, I mean, look, there's fights out there to be had, and there's fighters out there that would love to get paid. So we'll just continue the conversations and kind of see where it's at. I think with Masvidal, he's got a couple more fights, I think 2 or 3 more fights left on his contract. Guys like John Jones, he just signed a 6-fight deal, I think, right before he fought Cyril Gane. So he's got 4 more fights left. He's not going anywhere. And the chances of him fighting 4 fights is pretty slim. And Alex Pereira, he just signed a long-term deal as well. I think 8 fights is what he said. I don't think he'll ever fight 8 fights, but he'll retire in the UFC. It's good on them to sign these long these long contracts, because they know that if I sign you to a long contract, I don't have to pay you for a long time. And especially towards the end of your career, I can lock you down. You're never going to fight 8 fights. And, and if you do decide to come back and fight, sure, I'll pay you, but they'll probably readjust your money, or they'll figure ways to cut it, and just drag you out as long as they possibly can to not have to fight you. Masvidal versus Conor would make sense at 170. Max Holloway versus Conor would make sense. All things sound good. I'm not mad at the Conor coming back. I think it's more than likely going to happen. And if it does come, it's going to come to a place where they can sell they can sell the arena. They need to be able to sell sponsors, and they need to be able to sell the arena. So, and they would rather do it no place other than in Vegas, because all of their staff lives there. It's important for them to do work. It's important for them to be where they don't have to pay for all their traveling. And I saw something else where someone had posted up, and it was funny because Mike Brown had commented right after I did, talking about how I think it was MMA Pack or MMA On Point, I think is what they said. They said something about, well, UFC has stopped paying for the corners of fighters. They're only going to pay one corner and the fighter. Dude, that's all they've ever done.
Oh, is it? I might have it here. Tell me if it's this one. Let's see. Is it this one? Oops, I didn't put it on for you. This one right here. Is that right? Oh, it's still not there, is it?
No.
There it is.
Yeah, UFC. I don't know. I can't see who said it. Is it MMA On Point?
Per RAF Miera.
Okay.
Raf Miera.
Okay, it says UFC no longer covers fighters' team accommodations and travel expenses. They never have. It's always been one corner, one hotel room. You had to sleep in the same hotel room as your corners.
Had they changed it in recent years to include that? No.
No, it's still the same. And somebody brought up a good point. I think it was Mike Brown. Basically said this. They had adopted that years and years ago, and other promotions have adopted it as well. That's what sucks, is that the UFC kind of sets the standard for other promotions that come up, and other promotions like, why? UFC's only paying for one. Why would we pay for 2? We're paying you more money. You can pay your own corners ways. Like when I was, and it's funny, I said this in my tweet today, is that I was making 2,000 and 2,000 to fight Gerald Rebrand, 4,000 and 4,000 to fight Hermes Franca, 8 and 8,000 to fight Yves Edwards, and I was the #1 guy in the world in the lightweight division. Yves was ranked #2. It should have been for the UFC title. Dustin Poirier just talked about this on the Joe Rogan show. That should have been for the UFC. This should have been for the UFC lightweight title, and it wasn't. I made $8,000 because I lost the fight. I still had to pay for my corners, my other 2 corners, to come and travel. So their airfare. And I had to pay for them to have a separate hotel, a separate room. And we stayed at the Mandalay and the MGM. So back then, the Mandalay and the MGM, Mandalay was brand new pretty much. It was pretty close to brand new. So rooms weren't cheap. And what I mean by cheap is back then they were like $220. That was considered expensive. But I was only making 2 and 2. So had I lost that fight, I mean, I wouldn't have made $4,000. Sponsor money was big, a lot bigger. That's what made it worth it back then. Is I made in that fight, my very first fight, I think I made $22,000, I think, for that fight in sponsors. I made $4,000 for the promotion. My second fight, I made about $25,000 in sponsors, and I made $8,000. Sorry, 2, 4, 4. I made $8,000. I thought I was rich, but they have never covered. Now they do if you're the main event. So if you're in the main event, they get you like a suite, and then they get you a separate room for your corners. So they give you your own suite, and then your corners get their separate room. So the UFC has a long ways to go. But look, if no one's going to push back on them and no one's going to challenge them on any of this stuff, they're not going to care. They're going to keep doing what they're doing. If they don't have another promotion that may steal their fighters, they're not going to care. MVP, I had, like I said, I had 2 managers today texting me. They're hoping that MVP sticks around. All they care about is they really want MVP, not to. They were like talking about how, man, we really need the promotion to stick around. We need alternatives for our fighters. We need something, man. We need something. We need something for our fighters to go to. It's stagnant out there. You're trying to get stuff done with the PFL, but the PFL right now is in this weird position because they probably aren't going back to ESPN. They won't be there anymore. Where are they going to end up? If you're a fighter right now, you're not trying to sign with them because you have no idea if they even have a TV deal. And if they don't have a TV deal, they might as well just wrap it up because you're just going to be in a small show promotion. I have no idea. So I don't know, man. I don't know. I think MVP is a great alternative if they can make it work. But this is no dig at the fight that they added. They added the Junior Dos Santos fight versus I can't pronounce his last name, Hasanganai, or not Hasanganai, but it was like something like that. And I'm glad Junior's getting paid. But you're not going to get any more viewership from España. Yeah, España. Yeah, you're not going to get any more. And I'm just using him as an example. There's a couple other fights on that card as well. You're not going to get any more fighters. You're not going to get more. You're not going to get more viewership, but you're spending more money. Which, look, as a fan, I love it. Thank you. I'm looking forward to seeing Junior in España. I know he is the blonde-headed guy, bigger guy. I'm looking forward to it. But we're hoping that you're not spending so much money on the first card that there won't be a second, a third, and maybe a fourth or a fifth, and we can move on. Fighters and managers are hoping that MVP sticks around so they have alternatives. So, all All right, this Friday night, you got Brian Battle versus Johnny Eblen for the middleweight title in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Cannot wait. It's on Friday night, you guys. It's March 28th. That's Friday night, right? I believe it is. March 28th.
March 28th is 25 to 6. No, it's Saturday.
Is it Saturday?
Yeah, because it's.
Damn.
Let's see. March 28th. Yeah,
Last-
they're both on Saturday. They're both on Saturday.
Got it. Because last Friday was the Fabian Edwards fight with Costello facing it, but that was in Spain, so that makes sense. Yeah, this is gonna be on Saturday night. My apologies. Saturday night, Johnny Eblen versus Brian Battle. Gonna be a fantastic fight, man. Brian Battle's gonna look to push this fight forward, put Johnny in a position where he starts to get tired, possibly. He saw that he kind of slows down a little bit when he fought Costello Vastinas, and Costello was just coming forward, throwing just heavy shots, trying to get him to fold a little bit. Was able to capitalize and get the submission in the last 10 seconds of the fight in the 5th round to win the title. Brian Battle has that style of come forward, take big shots, make you fight a very uncomfortable fight. Johnny Eblen's going to have to utilize his wrestling and his striking to get himself off the fence and not let Brian Battle weigh on him, in this fight against the fence and slow him down. I think it's going to be a fantastic fight, man. And I'm also excited to see how Brian Battle, what his experience is showing up into a new organization. Doesn't feel like home. You were in the UFC for so many years, then you went to dirty boxing, and now you're in the PFL, jumping 2 different organizations in the last year. There's something behind that. It's very difficult to perform at your highest when you don't feel comfortable just yet with the people around you. And so, it's funny that Brian said a couple of things like, what's crazy is a couple of people that work for the PFL. There are people that I used to deal with at the UFC. They left and went to the PFL. I'm like, oh, that's cool. So some of it does start to feel like home. You see some of them, but I think this fight is going to be a damn good scrap. It's going to be a fantastic fight, and so I'm looking forward to seeing that fight happen. So it's a really good fight. I can't see it not being a good fight. The way Brian Battle fights definitely I think he'll bring out the best in Johnny Eblen, and I think things go both ways. And then you got Dalton Rosta. Absolute, just a beast. Heavy hands, quick, explosive. He's got good wrestling, good takedown defense. But Impa Kasanganai is going to keep this thing on the feet. He may try to wrestle a tiny bit, but I think he's more of a sprawl and brawl type of guy. And he's going to try and walk Dalton Rosta down and land the big shots. Clinch on him, hang on him, lean on him. It's going to be a good fight, man. It's going to be a really, really good fight. So, yeah, man, I'm looking forward to that. Also, too, the main events in the PFL, this main event is not a 5-round fight. It is a 3-round fight. So I wanted to make sure you guys knew that. So this will be one of those fights I think will probably favor Johnny Eblen, only based on the fact that he's got great cardio, 3-4 rounds. You get into that, but I think it's gonna lean towards Johnny a little bit. But it all depends on how Brian Battle handles the nerves in the new organization. Does he fight like he normally fights? Because if he does, that puts Johnny in a lot of trouble because of his pressure, just carelessness on how Brian Battle fights. I would love to see Brian Battle go back to Paris because when he gets on the mic in Paris, man, he lets him have it. He lets him have it. Don Ross and Impa Kasanganai, man, good fight. Both guys are built like brick shit houses. Both guys are built like Greek gods. So this can be a fantastic, fantastic fight. And Ariana Lipski da Silva versus Sumika Anaba, another good fight. Sumika Anaba, good boxing, good stand-up, good lateral movement. She's going to be in, getting out. She's got to be able to land the big shot. Lipski, though, really good at, using her length and her reach. She's going to be aggressive, and I'm looking forward to seeing this can be probably a really good stand-up battle between the two. So a really good fight. Really good fight. Julio Arce is just a dog. Somebody who is going to just basically take a lot of damage, keep coming forward, keep putting them on him. And I think if you guys have seen him fight before, he's a stud of a fighter, and Alexia Puragande, I think is how you say his name. Also another good fight. So these are some good fights on this card. Make sure you guys check them out. It'll be on Saturday night. Don't miss it. Check it out. Have some fun with that card. Guys, support the other MMA organizations, okay? If you want to have some competition, that's what we got to do. Let's go ahead and roll into the UFC event. Let me pull it up real quick because I just had it here.
Got it here.
There you go. You got Joe Pyfer versus Israel Adesanya this Saturday. Look, the question, I think, from everybody, and if you watch any of the other media sources and channels and stuff, they're all saying the same thing that I'm about to say. So I'm probably not saying anything you guys haven't heard before. Is that it really just comes down to how Izzy's chin holds up. Can Joe Pyfer connect with the big shot? And will Izzy's chin hold up to that big shot? Will the lateral movement and the length of Izzy, will it be enough to keep Joe Pyfer at the end of his punches and kicks? Will Izzy get back to the slick Izzy that we saw when he first popped onto the scene, was just crushing dudes? Will it be that way? Will he stick and move and just be so flashy that it frustrates both Joe Pyfer and he walks into something? I mean, the age of Joe Pyfer, that says, like, you know, to me, Joe Pyfer being the younger guy, the guy that is, how old is Joe, by the way? I keep thinking he's like 29. He's 29. Okay, good. I was like, wait, am I thinking that he's got it? So he's 29 years old. You know what? Izzy's what, 38, 37?
I think he's 37. Hold on.
Yeah, I think he's 37.
Yeah,
36. Yeah, 36. Mainly, though, the argument is not so much with Izzy's cardio. The argument is so much with his chin. Can he afford? You know, he's been doing kickboxing for a long time. You know, fought in Glory for a long time. You know, he's had some knockouts. You know, from Alex a couple times. Like, those are things that when your chin goes, your chin goes. And you know, he's lost to Imavov, and then now fighting Joe Pyfer. You know, he lost to Imavov by, you know, knockout, and then he lost. There's a chance he may lose to Joe Pyfer in the stand-up battle. And Joe was one of those guys that just doesn't care what you do on the feet. Doesn't care how good you are on the feet. He's just going to walk through you, try and touch you on the chin. And if he does, you're going to sleep. So I don't know. This is the approach that the UFC should be taking. If guys are going to stick around like Israel is, and you've got guys like Joe Pyfer who are knockout specialists, this is the approach the UFC needs to take on every single one of their guys. And unfortunately, it comes to the hands of an older fighter. You know, and I'm not saying that Izzy's going to lose this fight. Joe Pyfer is someone who, like, he has shown that he has a hard time sometimes controlling his aggression to the point where he makes himself tired. Now, I don't think that's going to happen. I think he's fighting a little bit more composed as of lately. But I think, though, too, in this fight that he's got to be very careful because Izzy is very slick. He's so talented, so good on the feet. Mixes things up, gives good feints. Strikes come from angles that you don't see. And he's a guy that kind of leans back out of the way because if he uses his legs and his length and his reach to go ahead and lean back out of the way and counter you with his hooks. He did that to Kelvin Gastelum. Was able to drop in the last seconds of the fight. These are things that people underestimate about Israel. So Joe Pyfer's going to have to get close, get in the clinch, control him, try and do some damage from there. I think that it favors Joe Pyfer. I don't know what the odds are on this fight, but I think it favors Joe Pyfer probably by at least a 2-1. Probably by a 2-1 favorite. Got the power, got all of that. So I think this is a card, or this is a fight, I should say, where I feel like the UFC matchmakers got it right. And I hate, what's that?
Izzy's a minus 140 favorite against the plus 120 underdog Pyfer.
Wow. I would have taken Joe Pyfer as the favorite in this fight. Just the knockout power, the aggression, I think the physical strength of Joe Pyfer. Joe Pyfer can wrestle. And on top, it shocks me that Joe Pyfer doesn't wrestle more to utilize his heavy hips and his ground and pound, because I don't think Izzy would have the answers for him if he was able to get him down and get to the top position. So if you're a betting person, I would take those odds probably. But overall, I mean, like I said, my concern was with last weekend's main event. The matchmaking just didn't make sense. Unless you wanted one of them to lose because they're both of them, you know, people have criticized both of them for not being the most entertaining fighters. So like, okay, look, we get rid of one fighter who's not considered to be exciting, and then the other one could fight for the title. And we've seen a big enough sample size now where we feel like Bolt could beat one of them. That's what you got. But talking with former matchmakers and other people that I know, they were just talking like, yeah, normally we would never match up the number 1 guy and the number 2 guy or number 3 guy, because they're both number 1 contenders, especially if they're both undefeated. We don't want either one of their O's to go before they fight for the title, because that gives the champion like another notch on his belt. We can say he's beaten this many undefeated fighters, and the names are blah, 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 blah. You want that like little feather in your cap if you're the champion. And if you're the promotion, you can say, my champion has beaten this undefeated fighter, this undefeated fighter. They didn't lose until they got to him. And I felt like that was definitely game plan by the UFC on having the two guys that are undefeated fight each other to get one of them out of the way. They probably weren't happy with either one of them. And all right, well, let's screw it. Let's just have you guys fight each other. Because then you end up with the fights that you saw. Neither fighter was, there was just too much on the line. Their O was on the line and the potential shot at the title was on the line. Both of those things carry a lot of value to a fighter. So you get in there and you're like, they don't want to pull the trigger. They don't want to make a mistake. And then you end up with fighters that just don't really fight to their potential. And that's what I feel like that's what we saw last weekend. And the co-main event on this is the Alexa Grasso versus Macy Barber. I mean, Macy Barber, I feel like this is her time. She needs to win this fight. This right here puts her in that position to fight for the title next. And let's just be honest. We need to have another challenger for that title. We need it. We need someone to challenge Valentina Shevchenko. We've seen the Alexa Grasso fight. So Alexa Grasso's not getting another shot at her, at least for another 1 or 2 more fights. I'd say 2, maybe even 3 after they fought, I think 3 or 4 times. So Macy Barber, this is her moment. This is her time to shine. I think that she gets it done. She's a lot more focused. She's a lot more calm. She's fighting with a little bit more composure. There's something there, man. There is something there. Michael Chiesa, Nico Price. I believe this is Michael Chiesa's last fight. I believe. This is a good fight for him. This is a really good fight for him. He can stand a little bit with Nico Price. You know, he can get the takedown and try and control that top position. It's just a matter of where he's at in his career. Is he grinding hard still? Is he still putting in the work? I mean, I don't know. I don't think anyone knows except for the people that he's surrounded by. So I look forward to seeing him back in there. I like Michael Chiesa, man. He's from kind of the same area that I was from, you know, where I went to high school. He's from that Spokane, Washington area. And, you know, I went to high school in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. And, yeah, man, he's an overall good dude. I never understood how he made the weight at 145 and then 155. I mean, 155, he's tall. He's like 6'2", 6'1", 6'2". I'm like, I have no idea how he ever made the weight. Ever. Terrence McKinney also is on the card. You've got Tofik Mosaev, who's from Azerbaijan, I believe, and really good kickboxer. He was in the Bellator for a while. And you got Bahamondes. This fight should end up being a really good stand-up battle. Bahamondes, if he wants to, he could probably have some success in getting Tofik Mosaev down. And Mosaev is not the greatest on the ground. He's not bad. Trains out of Kill Cliff, surrounded by some good wrestlers, but he's pretty much predominantly all striking. Bahamondes, though, he's got some wrestling. Probably better wrestling than Tofik Mosaev. So I could see that possibly happening. Chase Hooper versus Lance Gibson Jr. This is Lance's chance to really shine. He needs to do something. He had kind of a dud of a fight when he first came in, you know, to the UFC. And I think that he needs to really go out there and just let it all hang out. He needs to shine. Just throw caution to the wind and let it go. And I think this Chase Hooper and this Lance Gibson Jr. fight, I believe, like someone's saying right here, a very underrated fight. I believe it is an underrated fight. This should be a good fight. Marcin Tybura versus Tyrell Fortune. Tyrell Fortune used to be the training partner of Ryan Bader. Tyrell Fortune is a good wrestler. I believe he's an All-American. And very talented on the feet as well. Not afraid to sling it. Doesn't like to wrestle now all of a sudden. Doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense. But Marcin Tybura is just a guy who stays in your face and makes you tired. And that's exactly how Tyrell Fortune loses. He loses to guys that hang on him, guys that clinch with him, guys that he struggles to take down. He struggles with those guys. Those guys that kind of just hang on you, guys that put pressure on you, and then he starts to slow down and then just can't get out of his own way. Doesn't control the top position all that well from his wrestling. He's got fast hands, good striking, but yeah. And then this fight right here really throws me off. Ricky Simón versus Adrian Yanez. Strange to me. I hope this is not the position that it really is in. The second fight on the prelims. Strange. I don't know. In Seattle, Washington, I don't know. Maybe they want the crowd to get there early, so they put a good fight on one of the first fights. Look, Seattle, Washington is known for having like a really good MMA atmosphere. The Northwest was huge in the MMA world when it first came about. Think about that. Benji Raddick, Dennis Holman, myself, kind of from that area there. You got Michael Chiesa. You have what's his name? Something Beer Bomb was his name. Can't remember his name. I was supposed to fight him a couple of times. He's from that area. What was his name?
Lyle
Beer Bomb. Yeah, Lyle Beer Bomb. There was a couple other guys that were from that area. Misha Tate, she's from that area. Who's her ex-boyfriend was from there. Her ex-fiance or ex-boyfriend was also from there. They're from the Northwest. There's a lot of good fighters that have come out of it. I mean, let's just not even talk about Team Quest. Team Quest was all out of there. You got Dan Henderson, Matt Lindland, Randy Couture. They all trained up in that Portland, Gresham area. Chael Sonnen, Mr. Uncle Chael, he's from that area. So Nate Corey, he's from that area. There's a lot of good fighters. Maurice Smith, if you guys remember him, I know that was probably before a lot of your guys' time watching the show. But yeah, he was from that area. A lot of really talented fighters came out of that Northwest area. So Seattle is known to have a great fan base. Bellator did a show there. We were talking about going back. Ed Herman, exactly. Keep it coming, guys. Keep it coming. You guys got names you want to throw out there. You guys keep it coming. Yeah, Ed Herman was out of there and some other guys as well. But really good, really talented guys out of that. And the fans come out. They come out full swing. They are amazing. Bellator did a show there at a small casino right outside of Tacoma, in between Tacoma and Seattle. Man, it was packed out from the very first fight. Packed out. And I know it was a small arena. I think it only did like 2,000 seat arena. It was like more of like in a theater type room. So it was like a theater seating that all went down to where the cage was. But it was such a great atmosphere. And the greatest part is I was doing cage side interviews and fans, the fans that all came out, they remembered me from when I was fighting on the lowest circuit. Josh Barnett. Yep, another one. But they remember me from like when I was fighting on the low circuit. I watched you fight at Tim Boyd. Was it Tim Boyd? John Boyd. Anyways, something Boyd. Yeah, Tim Boyd. I think it was Tim Boyd's tournament or whatever, fight tournaments or whatever. When Brandy and Dan Henderson and Matt Lindland and Evan Tanner, they were like judges for my fight. Trevor Prangley and I were from that area, wrestled at North Idaho College. So, yeah, man, it was like. It's a great area to have a fight, to have a venue. So hopefully I think because they know the fan turnout will come early, this is a great fight to have on that early card with Ricky Simone and Adrian Yanez. And then a couple fights later, you get Tybura versus Fortune. Then you get Chase Hooper, Lance Gibson Jr. And Lance Gibson, his dad, is from that area as well, that Seattle area. And then Chase Hooper, I don't know where he's from. But you've got fighters that are from that area, and I think there's a pretty big fan base that comes out of there. So it should be a good night of fights. The crowd should be electric. Seattle does it right when it comes to Jeff Munson as well, Josh Barnett. Man, you guys are keeping it. Mighty Mouse. How did I forget Mighty Mouse? Matt Hume is there as well. Rich Franklin trained out there with Matt Hume during that time as well. So yeah, a lot of good fighters have come out of that area. But yeah, Dave, you have anything else? Do you have any news for us?
I think that was it. I think we hit everything. Yeah.
We did. I think we did hit everything. And like I said, guys, I'm not trying to take down Ariel. I'm not trying to like talk shit about him. I'm not doing any of that. I feel the need to emphasize that the sport needs to grow new fans. And the best way to do that are not new fans. It needs to grow new fighters, that young, talented fighters need to come into play. And these guys need to step up. They need to be able to beat the old dogs. They got to be able to beat the Justin Gaethjes. Like Arman Sarukian is a classic example of guys that when their number was called, they were able to get it done and they're having success. And those are the guys that we know will end up being champion one day and probably being champion for a while. And so I'm looking forward to seeing guys like Arman and Paddy and another fight, Joshua Van and other guys come up through the rankings and establish themselves as some of the best to ever do it. I'm hoping to. Kai Bahalo, Jean Silva. We've got these younger guys that are on their way up, and I'm excited about it. But the only way that these fighters start to get recognition is by us, and I'll throw myself in the mix because I know I got some hate for it, is us media trying to talk about their fights, trying to pump up their organization, trying to not promote them, but just doing our job of giving them the love. You know, I mean, maybe we're going to lose some clicks, but it also helps the sport grow. And that's what ultimately I've noticed that there was a couple MMA fans pages that one of them had announced that they're going away. And he had like 60 or 70,000 followers on Instagram and like another like 10,000 on X. And he literally was like, yeah, I'm wrapping it up, man, saying goodbye, this and that. And then I think people were asking like, why? It's just like the sport's not developing anymore. So the numbers are down. You know, and I every station that I talk to, every show that I talk to, that lag between December 15th show, the December 13th or 15th UFC fights, until they did the first Paramount card, people's numbers were atrocious. And this is another reason why not to bank all on one promotion. Is when we're not talking about the sport itself and getting fans involved into more of the sport itself in MMA versus just the UFC, we're gonna have downtimes like that when there's no new stars. The best time to be alive in the sport is when we had the what if this fight happened versus this fight. What if Fedor came to the UFC? What if Brock Lesnar and Fedor fought? What if, you know, Cain Velasquez fought this guy? What if, you know, people were thrown out? What if I fought Anthony Pettis? What if I fought Donald Cerrone? You know, what if Gil Melendez fought Benson? Like there was all these what ifs. That was the best time to be alive and be a fan. So many fights that we always just wondered what would have happened if that fight would have happened. And sometimes we got the answers and sometimes we didn't. So let's remember that. Hoping that PFL continues on. I love what they're doing. And like I said, their main event this weekend is a barn burner. Dalton Rosta also with Impa. Great co-main event. Make sure you guys tune in. March 28th. You guys can flip between channels. Do yourself some love, man. Flip between channels. Watch both shows. Have some fun with that. Hit that like and subscribe button. I want to thank you guys that tuned in. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate you guys. And man, we're out of here.